Eagles fans. This is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today we're going to discuss the Eric Wilson signing, the possibility of movement in the first round, and the Eagles' biggest needs heading into the draft. Chris, how you doing today?
Not bad at all, Mike. It's quickly approaching. You mentioned the draft, man. It's hard to believe that we're almost there. I mean, just a few weeks from now, we'll be seeing who the Eagles add to there, and then the Eagles made a couple moves yesterday. So it's fun times right now, man. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. Just hanging in there. Just trying to do my part, I guess, on this beat to kind of have some fun and make sure that we're covering the team the right way, I guess you could say. So let's just get into it. So they signed Eric Wilson on Wednesday. We're recording this on a Thursday. Look, this is an upgrade in my opinion. While there have been rumors that he might play middle linebacker, it sounds like he's not very good against the run, and he has trouble getting off blocks, but he's an elite coverage guy, so I would probably project him to be an outside linebacker. He's very, very fast and fluid. He's a guy who makes a lot of plays on the ball. Right now, my guess is in base, it would be Eric Wilson at will, Alex Singleton at Sam, and then TJ Edwards at Mike. And then Singleton and Wilson would be the nickel linebackers, and then Wilson would be the dime backer as well. He does have some safety hybrid stuff to him. He played safety in high school, played a little bit of safety in college. So overall, I look at this move as an opportunity to improve coverage and also to reunite him with former Vikings assistant linebackers coach Nick Rallis, who, of course, is now the new linebackers coach in Philadelphia. What do you think of the move?
I actually like it a lot. I think when you look at, he's a young guy, he can go ahead and he's, like you said, he's athletic enough to go ahead and go cover that crow flat area, especially when you have the ability of running backs nowadays to catch the ball out the backfield and that are quick. So I think that definitely helps out as well too. And as you mentioned before, I also think he's going to be a will backer, because given how the Colts used their defensive alignments last year and their philosophies, it definitely looks like they usually like to have their most athletic linebacker to be the will. And I think that's actually a good thing for him, because you don't put him in the potential situation of having to go head up all the time against a tight end and get caught up and get washed out there. So I think Singleton going to the Sam was going to good, and just it's an overall good upgrade to this linebacker core. I mean, when's the last time you've been able to say that in earnest about this team? So it's a 1-year deal, so you get a chance to see what he's able to do. And if you like him, you have a chance to re-sign him. And if not, it doesn't work out, then you can move on. But overall, I think it helps out in so many aspects on the back end of the defense.
Well, and I think something that we need to clarify, too, is he's not like a Corey Nelson signing. He's not a Jatavis Brown signing. This isn't a guy who is a career special teams ace who's just coming in and trying to win a starting job. This is a guy who started last year, had 122 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. He's a guy who has 8 sacks through the last 3 seasons, so he's probably a relatively good blitzer. And look, in Mike Zimmer's system, if Jonathan Ginn's going to run that, especially with a lot of cover 2 looks, I mean, these linebackers are going to get the opportunity to blitz, and I think that favors somebody like Singleton and somebody like Wilson. So I don't know if it really helps TJ Edwards. I don't know how much of a fit TJ Edwards is. He's a guy I like a lot. I think he can be a good special teams player, but as far as starting at middle linebacker in a zone heavy system, I don't know if that makes a ton of sense. What do you think about TJ Edwards moving forward with Wilson in-house?
I think just given the way the game's going now, with everybody throwing 3 wide receivers on there, so you're going to see a lot of nickels. So Edwards, I think, it's almost like the old school middle linebacker now are going away of the fullback, where they're like a novelty. It's almost, you don't really see that many run oriented middle linebackers now, and that's where he excels, I believe. So he has the ability to contribute, like you said, on special teams, but I still think if when it comes to short yardage, he's still a good asset to have. And it's just going to be it's going to be up to Gannon to find a way to try to scheme it so he's not exposed out there in pass coverage. If a team goes ahead and decides to go like a 22 two tight end, 2 running back system and is short yardage. So if I still think he's still adds value to this team, it's just definitely going to be, they're going to have to find a way to creatively insert him into the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think they're going to have to draft somebody and kind of make sure that they're continuously upgrading the talent there and creating more competition. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think as Nick Sirianni said a lot over in his first press conference, he loves competition. I mean, so it only helps out, I think, in the end. And in worst case scenario, if they don't find a spot for him, he's still a good enough player that some teams may be interested in him. You may, who knows, get a day 3 pick for him in order to go ahead and to get back. So even if it doesn't work out, then hey, you know what? He's still a good player. He's still very young as well too, and he'd latch on somewhere. But overall, I don't think there's any downside of having him on the roster at all. I don't think he's gonna. I think he's going to still be able to be a contributive player.
I think, you know, I think when you look at Davian Taylor and you look at Sean Bradley, these are 2 guys who are unknown. Same with Joe Bocci and Jannard Avery, kind of at the linebacker positions unknown. It's going to be interesting to see how they value the internal guys. I get the vibe from everything that I'm hearing that Alex Singleton will be a starter. So you can probably just convince yourself that Wilson and Singleton are guys. Outside of that, I think this is going to be a really healthy competition. Well, let's briefly touch on Jordan Howard, because I think a lot of people made a big deal out of this. And to me, this is like the most irrelevant thing to discuss ever. I know that sounds weird introing a topic, but Jordan Howard's probably on a minimum deal. He's not guaranteed to make the team. He was abysmal for the Dolphins last year. I'm still shocked at the contract that he got by the Dolphins, because it made literally no sense. He was coming off a stinger injury that like basically shut him down for half a season, and they paid him like top of the market running back money, and he predictably failed. Look, I think if you're the Eagles, you're looking at this as, hey, this is a guy who's familiar with our building. He can be a power back if he plays to his potential. You're getting him for nothing. I'm blah on this. Like, I don't really think this moves the needle one way or another. Where are you with it?
I think it gives you. I still think he's their best pass blocking. Even he didn't play that much. I still think ability wise, I think he's one of their better pass. I think he is. Best pass blocking running back.
Low bar, but yeah.
He is. And then worst case scenario, you have a short yardage back, but I don't think this stops the team from drafting a guy. I don't think a draft a guy or signing a top tier undrafted free agent as well too. They're not locked in long term. Now, if they signed him like they did, like a 2 or 3 year deal, then I'd be a little more concerned. But I think overall there's no downside, and we know that Scott and Sanders have been in the league now for a few years now, but it doesn't help to have the guy who's been there even longer, a guy of his veteran stature. So he's not the same Jordan Howard that we saw in 2019. He's not on that level, but I still think he's good enough to potentially be like a third running back on his squad. And I think the concern level for a lot of people, it's just to come down just a little bit. I don't think it's anything to fret about.
So a lot of people are going to say, why not just get a day 3 guy to mold? That Oh no, go ahead.
Say when it comes to the day three guys, I mean, you don't know what you don't know what you're getting. I mean, sometimes you're able to find good quality running backs and in that sixth, seventh round, i.e., Jordan Howard. But when you look at, I think there's still a learning curve that's associated with it, and when you look at the intricacies, like you don't want to completely put your offense, Jalen Hurts in a bad position as well. Too. I mean, he's only his second year. You want somebody that knows the scheme enough to go ahead and start to pick up some of those blitzing linebackers or the occasional cornerback or slot guy coming out there. So you need somebody that's able to go ahead and know to do that stuff. And you just it doesn't preclude. I mean, look at last year. I mean, look at Michael Warren, Adrian Killens. Everybody thought that these guys, self included, thought these guys would be able to contribute, and they had good careers, and they really didn't. You don't know what you're going to get, so it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to have that guy, that veteran guy there to go ahead and help out with things.
But here's the thing, though. He's a 26-year-old that, see, so I'm all for the veteran mentor thing, but let's get into this. It's just like I'm kind of just like always confused as to how a rookie quarterback always needs a veteran mentor, right? So wouldn't it just be better if they had really good coaching? I mean, I think to me that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. I mean, Jamal Singleton's been around forever. He's a former running back. He's older. Like, do they need a mentor in the running back room? Running back is typically the room that is like the easiest to adapt to as an NFL player. So that's kind of where I'm like, look, if your argument is, look, they're bringing him in to be like a really good blocker, I completely buy that. That's completely fine. But the whole like mentor thing, like he's 26 years old. He's played like 2 more years than Boston Scott. So, to me, like that's not the angle I would take. I mean, I get what you're saying though.
And also, I think when it comes to like that mentor role stuff like that, I think that it does add a little bit more value. I mean, I know a lot of people think like, oh well, like you said, like you could bring in coaching, but when you look at a lot of times they're coaches and you tune out when you see somebody else, one of your peers that you suit up with every week, and they're doing the same things. It adds a little bit more credence if you say, hey, and I think especially with only being 2 years older, I think it helps out a little bit more when you start. It's almost like you see your if you hear your dad going like, yo, don't go out and don't play in the street. But then you see your older brother's like, it's like, I don't want to listen to it go out. But then your older brother just goes, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's not a good thing, but maybe you can do this instead. You kind of take credence like, all right. Like the first time you hear, you're like, oh, okay, why am I doing this? But then the second time, especially with somebody that you know or close to
this
you,
analogy is wild. This analogy is wild. Like I lost you like 20 minutes ago.
I went all off kilter, but it's sort of like this: when you see somebody you're suiting up with and close in age and everything else, and they I think they add credence to whatever a coach says. I think it just hammers the point home instead of just hearing somebody from like, "Hey, you played about 10 years ago." Maybe you sometimes question a little bit, but it just hammers home. I think when you have a player in a similar situation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That's fair. So let's move on here. There's been a lot of talk about the first round, and I've been very aggressive with this because I actually think the trade back is very, very smart from a strategic standpoint. Okay, we discussed it last week, but obviously last month, but the Eagles traded back from 6 to 12. Got a 2022 first round pick in the mix. That was huge because that's an overpay for the Dolphins. So the Eagles have that house money. They have the potential to have 3 first round picks next year. They don't even have to look at next year's draft to move up the board, though. That Carson Wentz third round pick that they got for this year will help them maneuver around the board if they want to. So let's talk about this. So they traded back to 12. That's not to say that they didn't like the talent in the top 11. It's to say, wow, they're getting a first round pick for trading back 6 spots. This is a smart move for the future of the franchise. That said, they could easily move back into the top 10 with the use of a third round pick. they have the 70th overall and 84th overall picks in the third round. They could use the 70th overall pick to get to 8 with the Carolina Panthers, who just traded for Sam Darnold, so it's not like they're gunning for a quarterback. They could trade up to 9 with the 84th overall pick. So both of those would help them jump Dallas and the Giants in case they felt that there was a position of need that was similar to theirs, like corner or offensive tackle. They could jump up in front of those guys and take take the guys that they could potentially target. They could also stay at 12 and trade back into the first round. They pick at number 37, and those third round picks can help them get as far as the 23rd overall pick based on the value chart. So I actually think this trade back allows them to be aggressive. Instead of waiting for somebody to fall to them at 6, they can watch how the board kind of falls. And if they like a guy, they can strike when the timing's right. As we've seen, there could potentially be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks. That'd be the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. And so once you get to 5, let's say Jamar Chase is there and the Bengals simply just want to get out of the pick to, pick up a couple of picks. Like, maybe that's how you jump and get somebody, because you still have that house money, that 2022 Dolphins first round pick. Where are you at with the way they can maneuver around the board?
I have no problem if they move up. I'd probably say if the Eagles moved up to say as high as 8 with the Panthers, I think that would probably be the most optimal move to do it, just because looking at potential needs that some of these teams have. When you look at the Broncos, I think they could definitely be in the cornerback market. Dallas could be in the quarterback market. I think the whole stuff with them being interested in Kyle Pitts, I think is potentially a smokescreen. And then you got the Giants as well too, which they don't need a wide receiver. They're probably more apt to go ahead and look at an edge rusher now with all the extra guys they have. So I think the Eagles, especially with all the ammo that they have, if they gave up a third round pick to move up to 8, there's no problem at all with the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers already have, if anything, I think they would look at potentially a receiver, but they got Robbie Anderson down there, and they're probably, if anything, looking to build around Sam Darnold now. So the Eagles go using a third round pick to move up. Okay, I'm completely fine with that. If they happen to go ahead and their guy like Slater, the offensive tackle, falls down to him, and he's the best guy that's available on the board and both corners are gone, I actually wouldn't have a problem with them trading back a couple of spots to go ahead and pick up some more stuff to maneuver around later on, later on next year as potentially as well too. So as long as they go up, if they target 8th with the Panthers, I think that's the place to go. Potentially 9th, but if they do be aggressive and try to get a cornerback, they're going to have to get to that spot in order to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm saying is look, let's say at 12 you draft J.C. Horn. You still have the opportunity to trade up and get somebody like Rashad Bateman or Terrence Marshall. Like, talk a little bit about that. Talk about your mindset of double dipping.
I think it's okay. It's okay. I think they're going to be if they're going to trade up in that later first round, I think there's a lot of linemen now be available. I think that's the best way to do it. And if they go ahead and I'm not so sure if I would go ahead and give up that Dolphins first round pick, but that Colts conditional pick, I'm all for giving that one up, because even though more than likely it's going to go ahead and convert to a first round pick, if the Colts are as successful as it potentially could be, I think it's going to be a worse pick than it would be than a Dolphins pick. So if you do move up and you want to go ahead and give that pick away, I'm all for giving that pick away, but I wouldn't touch the Dolphins one. I certainly wouldn't touch the Eagles on first round pick, because it potentially probably is going to be another top 10 year. We get a top 10 pick given the year they potentially could have. But if there's the USC offensive lineman's name escapes me right now, but if a guy like that, interior lineman is available right now, that could potentially be a guard or a swing tackle for years, I'm all for going up and getting that guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they're in a position to be as aggressive as possible, and I think, knowing that you have potentially 3 first-round picks next year, you can feel good about trading one of their third-round picks. Everybody talks about wanting all these picks, but realistically, you're going to have guys like Davian Taylor who need a couple of years. You're going to have guys that you can draft in the later rounds that you think have potential to play right away. You look at guys like Jack Driscoll and Quez Watkins, one would say that people have a higher outlook on him than Davian Taylor, right? So I think, look, these third round picks allow them to move up and down the board. And I know, look, you traded Carson Wentz and you want to be able to use the plethora, the two picks that you got for him. But what says that they get, like, here's the thing, that player is always going to be associated with that trade. You're better off trading, not that this is the reason to act, but you're better off using the value from the Wentz trade to better your team by improving your ability to double dip with top tier premium talent. That's where my outlook is. Their two biggest needs, in my opinion, are cornerback, massive drop off, wide receiver. So if you have the opportunity to double dip, it makes sense, especially if, let's say, both corners are off the board and you decide Kwity Paye can be the future of your pass rush. You draft him. Well, you still need a corner. Now you can trade up and get somebody like Greg Newsome or Eric Stokes or what have you. That's all I'm saying.
It makes sense. It definitely it makes sense in order to do that. I think when see the corners, like still think for me I think it's that second tier cornerback area is pretty deep. So I don't know trade up specifically for him for a corner. I think a couple guys might fall aboard. I think Asante Samuel Jr. I think is a good potential guy who could be there as well too. So I don't know if it's for a cornerback. I'm not trading so much. I actually like Nico Williams a lot, and I think Nico Collins, sorry, from Michigan. I think he's a wide receiver that could still fit what they're looking for. It could be an X guy. So I think there's guys still later on that you can still pick up and get. So I wouldn't. Even then, if I think when it comes to what their needs are, at least at like say the receiver position and cornerback, I still think there are guys that would fall to that you don't have to jump up to get, unlike a position like say offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about how you value the board and value the positions, right? Like, we know that the Eagles historically build through the trenches. I don't think they would trade back into the first round for a linebacker. Especially after signing Wilson. Yeah. Or a running back. I think when you look at the wide receiver position, I know everybody in the fan base views that as a glaring hole, but they've realistically invested in guys like Jalen Reagor and spent picks on Quez Watkins, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, John Hightower. We've seen a lot of potential from Travis Fulgham, who kind of wore out his welcome with the old staff because he kind of freelanced routes a little bit. And then they had Alshon Jeffrey come back. So there is like this balancing act that you need to do between, hey, do you take Jamar Chase, who's the blue chip guy, or do you trade up for him, or do you try to get him, or do you settle for Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle as basically consolation prizes? Very good consolation prizes, by the way. I'm not like discrediting them or whatever. But if you're not going to get the top guy, maybe you feel like you need to get the top guy at corner or the top guy at pass rusher, if that makes sense, right? So I think that's something that the Eagles need to weigh. Now, that said, they draft Jalen Waddle, I think the fan base is going to be thrilled. If they draft Patrick Surtain, I think the fan base will definitely understand that pick. J.C. Horn, I think there will be some, there'll be some divide there. But I think Kwity Paye is a guy who not enough people are talking about. And I do think, like, if there was a top tier pass rusher in the top 10, they wouldn't have moved out. That's my belief. Just based on philosophy, based on what I hear and know, I think they are really trying to upgrade that pass rushing rotation at some point in this draft. And so it's something to watch out for. And I think if the fan base gets upset over them drafting Kwity Paye at 12, I still think they should be on high alert because the Eagles have the ammunition to move back up into the first round and potentially get a playmaker or a cornerback. To me, like I said, I think cornerback is an astronomical need here. You're going to move Avonte Maddox back into the nickel position. Cool. He's fine there. I wouldn't say he's great. I'd say he's fine. Darius Slay on the wrong side of 30, but still a top tier cornerback. You're good there. But that second spot is currently being filled by Craig James, who hasn't played, who's started like 2 games in his entire career and is mostly a special teams ace. You also have Michael Jacquet. You don't know what he is. You don't know really what, Levert Hill or whatever his name is, like there's not enough talent there, and it's easily their most glaring hole. And so I think if you're the Eagles and you have the opportunity to jump the Cowboys, and the Giants to get Patrick Surtain, or you really feel like JC Horn can fall to 12, that's where I would go. I've watched Kwity Paye. I think he's got a ton of potential. He's extremely athletic, but the college production to me kind of would scare me off a little bit. I think he's a guy you take if you feel like you're comfortable at wide receiver and cornerback, and I don't think they are.
Yeah, I think that's he's definitely not bad. I still like Russo from Miami. I wouldn't take him that high. That's why I think that if a lot of the guys that they're really truly targeting are going to trade back, if you're going to go that defensive end round, I think he's athletic. I think his upside, I like him a little bit more than Paye. I think Paye's really good. I like Rousseau, what he could potentially bring as well too. He's raw, but I think when given his size, his athleticism, I think he can go ahead and give a lot to this defensive line and add the different dimension to it as well too. So if say Surtain goes, if you say if Horn goes, if Waddle goes, Pitts, all those guys, then I wouldn't be afraid. I wouldn't be adverse to trading back and I'll go ahead picking up a guy like Rousseau on as well too. And I think a lot of people, I know there's a big red flag on him as well too, but I wouldn't be counting out Caleb Farley. I mean, the guy had to have back surgery to clean up some stuff, but he still was a very talented guy. And if it looks like he's going to be back down there, that's the only reason that I would probably say that if he's still down there in like late at 25, I don't see it, but if he's down there like 25, 26, and then, and you have the opportunity to trade up, then I would grab him then, but I think he's going to be going before then. But I still think if you go defensive line, I really like Russo still.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with Russo is the 3-cone. His 3-cone, he messed up. Well, no, he messed up. Like, I think for me, that 1-year production, it's an incomplete grade. So I don't know. I just think to me, I don't know. I would stay away. I don't think there's enough information, if that makes sense. Let's talk about their needs overall. What would you say is their biggest need that we haven't talked about? What's the under the radar need for them?
I think when looking at everything else, I really think they still need. I think they need another. I wouldn't be surprised to get another defensive tackle. I look at right now. You have Hargrave and Cox. They're both Hargrave. Is going to be his contract's not that long, and Cox is getting older. So I think it's another guy that you need some guys to go ahead and fill that spot. And I also think it still wouldn't hurt to go find another safety. I mean, Ronnie McLeod's getting older, coming off an ACL injury. Kayvon Wallace is still young, and then I just think they don't have that guy that you look from that you could see on the roster of 3 years from now that could be a potential starter. There's so many question marks around there. I mean, I know they had the free agent signing there, but it's not. There's nothing major. There's nothing there at that position where I think that you feel 100% about for the future. So I think safety is another position that they should definitely look at and address. What about you?
I agree. I think safety is a big need. I still think linebacker is a tremendous need, even with Eric Wilson here. I think if you look at their overarching needs, defensive end, again, is a big need because, look, Derek Barnett's on a 1-year contract. Brandon Graham's getting up there in age. Josh Sweat's in the last year of his contract. And outside of those 3 guys, they have Joe Osman, right? So I think defensive end's a much bigger need than a lot of people realize. And so, with that said, I think when we, wrapping this up in a bow, I think the Eagles shouldn't rule out any potential position to upgrade. You've got a new coaching staff. You have 11 draft picks. You have the ability to maneuver around the board. Look, I know there are guys that would disappoint the fan base. I know there are prospects that some people will feel like they should avoid, like Russo. To me, I get it. I see the production. I see the attributes. I don't see the 12th overall pick there. But again, some people might. So I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how this whole thing comes together. In your final thoughts, Chris, tell me what you're looking forward to. Like, should the make a pitch for a position the Eagles should address in free agency before the draft?
I think looking at what the things that they really need to go ahead and address still would be to try to find another cornerback. I think it's going to be a learning curve when it comes to whatever new guy comes in there. I mean, you can go ahead and use a lot of raw talent in order to go ahead and just run with somebody. But I think when it comes to the little nuances of playing that zone, I think it comes also when it comes to the tackling. I think they still need a good tackling corner being the outside edge as well, too. So if they could find somebody who's a cornerback that can go ahead and who can play outside cornerback, because Lord knows they have enough slot guys in there, they can go ahead and that can go in there and contribute and hold the fort in potentially in just like as a placeholder for whoever they draft at cornerback. I think that would be a good way to go. What about you?
I mean, I think corner's the move. Steve Nelson, do it. That would be the guy. But outside of that, the pickings are slim. So, guys, remember to download the No Huddle Show podcast and subscribe wherever podcasts are available. Make sure you sign up for Eagles Extra. We'll have an exclusive Q&A later this week on Friday at noon. Really looking forward to it. Guys, appreciate you joining us. For Chris, I'm Mike. We'll see you soon.